So in part one, we covered the demographics of giving in the church. If you haven't watched that episode yet, feel free to go back to your YouTube channel, watch that one first. We learned some great things about how the average giving in the church is just 2.5%. Their total income in a church is usually a little higher than their community, and some other great things. If you've already watched part one, welcome to part two. We're going to be talking about psychographics. So what this is people's beliefs, values, preferences they have, and that's what we're really going to be diving in here today in part two. So to best understand psychographics, we need to first understand the Mosaic system. If you're not familiar with mosaics, I'll do a brief overview here, but no, we did a full video on this earlier in another series, so feel free to go back and check that one out on our channel. But really what mosaics are something developed actually somewhat behind closed doors by the credit agencies. And really what they've done is grouped every single American household into one of 71 different groups or types, mosaic types we call them. And that's based off of 300 different variables that go in that they know about you, your age, your income, where you work, your credit behavior, all these different kind of things they go into. Essentially kind of put you into a box. Now we all know we're individuals, but what we're able to do is use that data to better understand who these people are and who these different types of people and how they behave. So again, we're all still individuals, but once you know a person's mosaic type, within about 85% or so accuracy, you can start making some pretty good assumptions with everything from, okay, hey, here's what they're looking for in a church, to what we're going to be talking about today is here's some of the things they look for before they give, what they're interested in giving towards, and how to communicate and speak with them that way. And none of this is designed to trick anybody into giving more money or anything like that. But what you'll see is it's really designed to show us how can we best communicate to these people in a way that they're going to understand what we're doing and how can we tell that story and best engage these people in the way that they prefer. So we'll jump in here and learn a little bit more about mosaics and the psychographics. So to start off, I want to show you a sample mosaic. This mosaic is called American Royalty. This group, they're one of the more wealthy and influential mosaics in the country. And what's unique about them, specifically when it relates to church, is the way they choose churches is kind of like how they choose cars. It's a status symbol for them. They're going to be wanting to go to the main campus that's got the water features and all the fancy stuff. That's going to be something to where they can say, oh, I go to this church. What's also important to know about this group is they can be extraordinary generous givers, once showing a proven track record of excellent stewardship in the church. And the reason I wanted to show you this group first, whether they're in your church or not, they may or may not be, and that's something we always look at when we do studies with churches is, hey, what mosaics do we have represented and how these people feel about the church and all these different things. But the reason I wanted to show you them is because I want to now show you another group. So this group, Platinum Prosperity, if you saw Platinum Prosperity and American Royalty in your church, there'd really be no way to tell them apart. They're the same age, same ethnicity, very similar incomes. They would look the same sitting in your congregation. So Platinum Prosperity, they have incomes $250,000 plus. They're interested in giving into education and the arts, and these kind of donor profiles is something we do for all our mosaics as we dive into them, just to give you a better understanding of who's in your congregation, or if you're nonprofit, who your donors are. But I wanted to show you them because although they look identical to American Royalty and everything is the same, the way they perceive giving is very different. So Platinum Prosperity, they do a lot of research beforehand, and some of that's similar to American Royalty. But this group, they're more swayed by some of the powerful images. They want the story behind it. They want to hear about, hey, here, the wells that were dug in our village, this is what that enabled these families to do. The mom was able to go back to work, the kids could go to school, and that's how it helped them. And those stories are going to really resonate with them and come across as something inspirational, and that's going to really essentially encourage them to give and be a part of that by presenting some of these problems in the form of stories. Now, the reason I say that is American Royalty, who we just looked at, again, very similar to Plan Prosperity, but they're going to look at that completely different. They're going to hear that and say, okay, great fluffy story, that's good and all, but hey, I'm about to write a $50,000 check. How many wells are going to get dug? What's the return on my investment? How many people are going to get saved? They really see this in a completely different way, whereas Plan and Prosperity would look at that and be like, oh, that's cold, where American Royalty would look at them and say, hey, you guys don't have any of the facts here. So neither of those are wrong. They're both right, but understanding who is in your congregation is really important into understanding how do we communicate to these people. Because we could be communicating like everyone's Plan on Prosperity, and we have a congregation full of American Royalty. And keep in mind, this is just 2 of the 71 mosaics. They all look at things completely different. So having an understanding of who is actually in your congregation is very important, and honestly, that pays for several of our reports just by getting that information. So that's something we'll look at, and something that we found really helpful both in nonprofits we work with, churches, schools. It's always important to understand who you're talking to and how to communicate to them. We'll look at other things like contributions and where these people are giving money based on the mosaic they're in. But then another important thing here, and I'll pull it up, is essentially how do we communicate to these people? So in this example, Full Pocket Empty Nest is another mosaic. You see these different communication styles. Now you see these scores next to them, and a score of 100 would basically mean they're receptive as much as the average American. So when we see this group and we look at direct mail and they have a score of 304, essentially what that tells us is these people are 3 times more likely to respond to direct mail than the average American. So if we saw that in a church, that would be something where we would consider, hey, we haven't been doing a direct mail campaign. This may be something we want to look at. Now, it can go the other way as well, too, is, hey, we've been doing direct mail campaign, haven't been reaching anybody, and we go in and discover, well, hey, all the mosaics in your community or your church are only receptive to digital marketing or Facebook or YouTube, Instagram ads. So that's something that's really important to understand, specifically when we're communicating to people, even more so when it comes to fundraising and giving, because we might be sending things one way and not reaching the people we want to reach. And on top of that, it's really important to understand, okay, once we get, hey, here's how we reach these people, here's the marketing medium they prefer, what do we then say? So the messaging, and we'll dive into things really in depth into these different mosaic groups of okay, what are the outreaches that really resonate with these people? How are they equipped to do outreach for their community, and what's something that they're really passionate about? And hey, if that's part of what we're doing, that needs to be maybe at the top of the page there of communicating what we're doing and to these people, where that's something that resonates with them. It's also important to look at some of the things we look at is again, some of the communication styles, but then also some of the giving styles of, hey, for whatever reason, this group, only November giving campaigns work, and maybe we've been doing our campaign in April and we haven't seen the best result. Well, that's because for whatever reason it's November, or like we were talking about earlier, these people want facts, or these people want a personal call, or to meet one-on-one. Things like that are really some great insights that we found have served churches well, just by essentially understanding who you're talking to and how we communicate based off of that. So that's something we always love to look at, and something that's really important. When it comes to things the church can do, there's a lot of opportunities. One, not to be biased, but I would highly encourage you to, whether that's with us or somebody else, to figure out what mosaics are in your church. So on Sundays, hey, here's who we're talking to. And are we speaking the same language, or are they hearing something different than what we're communicating because of some of those psychographic attitudes? So that's something that I couldn't recommend more, and we've seen some really great benefits out of that. Another thing I would recommend is just looking at ways we can teach biblical finance in the church. I'll pull up another slide here, and I got it right here in front of me too, so I can make sure I get the numbers right here. But in America, career and financial concerns are huge. I mean, 8 out of 10 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's crazy. When we look at some of the concerns that are most important to people, you see number one, financing the future and saving for retirement. 50% of people would say that's a modest concern. 25% of people would say that's a significant concern. The thing that concerns me is only 25% of people say that's a significant concern. We have 8 out of 10 Americans living paycheck to paycheck. But another big thing is day-to-day financial matters. Again, huge numbers. Reaching my goals, being successful, having a satisfying job and career. These are all really big numbers that almost everybody in your church is dealing with in some way or another when you add these up in each category. And as a church, this is also a great way to reach our community. When we do these studies, we always look at the community and say, how do these people feel about these different things? And specifically, we'll look at finances because we're talking about giving here. We'll look at all other things too. But I mean, one of the things you could do right away is if you have any kind of financial course as a church, or a Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, you could get something going either at the church or virtually, and that's an awesome way to reach people, engage them, but then also to engage your congregation as well, and getting them on those pages, because this is stuff they're dealing with too. And to be quite frank, it's going to increase the giving in your church when people start getting out of debt. Now, that's not necessarily why we want to do that, but it's a great way to serve our congregation, and that's an excellent byproduct of that. So those are a few options there. There's many more. If you have questions, you want to learn more, or again want to learn what mosaics are in your church, we'd be happy to talk with you. Feel free to you can email myself at andrew@kingdomanalytics.com, or just go to our website, kingdomanalytics.com, and there'll be an option to connect with us or set up a free consultation, and we'd be happy to talk with you and learn more about your church and get you some information as well, so we're communicating the right way to the right people and serving our communities. We'll see you. Thanks.